Today we're going to look at bias and propaganda, not just in cartoons and pictures, but also in text and in the historical context. So we're going to see some of those things about like manifest destiny and different wars that the United States fought like we saw yesterday, but making it a little bit more real, a little bit more in depth. So, just to start us off, if we look at some of the things that are going on today and remind ourselves of how bias and propaganda and opinion are still influencing the way that we talk about things today. So, for example, these are two different headlines that were published after the Michael Brown death. And so the first one reads, "Unarmed man shot by police," and the second one says, "Officer uses lethal force to defend himself against attacker." So they both mean the same thing. They both mean that a man was shot by the police, but they say it in very different ways, right? Unarmed man shot by police makes it seem like the unarmed man wasn't doing anything, whereas this one here makes it sound like there was an attacker and the officer was just defending himself. So very different ways to portray the same event. Check out this one. Check out this one about Eric Garner in New York, and see what you think they were saying about that. Here's another example, very real to New Orleans. These are two different articles that were published right after Hurricane Katrina, and you can see here this is a picture of a kid, a black kid, obviously. And when they went through and talked about it, they said that this kid was looting a grocery store. And if you look up looting, and that word has connotations about stealing. It has connotations about taking something that's not theirs, taking something that they can just because it's free right then, and they have the opportunity to steal. Right, so they were saying basically that this person was stealing things. But then pretty much the same picture, you have two white people instead of a black person, and they said that they were finding bread and soda from a grocery store. Whereas this guy was looting a grocery store, these people were finding bread from a grocery store. So using the exact same image, the exact same concept, but portraying it using different words in totally different ways. So we're going to look at some historical context for this idea of propaganda, opinion, and bias influencing the way that we report things and talk about things in history. So the first one is the Mexican War. I'm going to read this out loud. This is a dispatch from a Mexican general who was talking about the beginning of the Mexican-American War. So we're going to see his point of view, his side, and see what biases he might have. So it starts. The American troops crossed the Nueces River and arrived in our territory on the 10th of April. We sent them a message 2 days later, on the 12th of April, requesting they remove their camp back to their own territory. We received no response. Then, the next day, we were patrolling the internationally recognized border of our country and encountered a party of American troops. And an encounter ensued in which we captured, killed, or wounded some 16 American soldiers. As the United States has sent its armed forces to invade our territory, we are required to defend ourselves with force if necessary. So think about the way that this general thought about the war starting. What did he think happened? What was his point of view? What biases did he have? So this is actually a cartoon made right after the beginning of the Mexican-American War. Think about what this image shows about what America is doing. Remember, think about what symbol do you see here that we learned about yesterday, and then what is that symbol doing that shows how they portray America. Right, this guy, they're showing Uncle Sam, the symbol of America, as taking over all of the land that's below him, taking over. You can see Cuba, Mexico is over here. So he's grabbing everything. He's like a spindly old man that's trying to get everything for himself. That's how they thought about America. That's how they thought about the Mexican-American War, that the United States was just trying to steal their land. So now let's look at the other side. This is from President Polk. This is actually his address to Congress for when he declared war on Mexico. So this is how he showed that same event that we just talked about. He says, the Mexican forces at Matamoros assumed a belligerent attitude, and on the 12th of April, the Mexican General Ampudia, then in command, notified the American General Taylor to break up his camp within 24 hours and to retire, that means go back, beyond the Nueces River. A group of 63 men and officers were on the same day dispatched from the American camp up the Rio del Norte on its left bank to find out whether the Mexican troops had crossed or were preparing to cross the river. They were attacked by a large body of Mexican troops, and 16 of our troops were killed or wounded. As war exists by the act of Mexico herself, we are called upon by every consideration of duty and patriotism to vindicate with decision the honor, the rights, and the interests of our country. So President Polk has a totally different idea of how that war started, right? He thinks that his troops were attacked by the Mexicans. He was saying war exists by the act of Mexico herself. Right? What biases does he have? How is his opinion different than that of the Mexican general that we just saw? And now let's look at an image. This is how America saw itself. Remember, we saw this yesterday, Manifest Destiny. America was this light that was bringing itself to the West, chasing out the darkness that was the native peoples or the Mexicans. And so there, America thinks that it is always the right thing and that everybody else is doing something wrong. So we've got totally different images, totally different ideas of how America was acting during this period of its history. So now I want you to try one. If you are on the left side of your partner pair, then go to this first link at bit.ly/DTA bias 1, and you're going to answer the questions on the left side of your paper. If you're on the right side, then go to the second link and answer the questions on the right side of your paper. When you're finished, then follow the link on the board, and with your partner, you're going to answer the questions in that document, and they're going to show up on the board so everybody can read them. Have fun.